All right, Internet, you on board? Do we get to do this again? Have you decided we're okay? Did YouTube win? You guys know how this works. There's a little bit of a lull. Twitter's always first. Twitter's always the early arrival to the party. YouTube came in second. Rockfin coming in third. All right. For anyone who doesn't know what just happened, I'm sure y'all do at this point, but I have to wait to make sure I see it and that we're live on all the platforms because I don't have an executive producer. It's just me. So I got to do it myself. And there's a little bit of a lull as we wait for people to log in and stuff and tune into the show. And just for fun, I always kind of say who comes in first, who comes in second, who comes in third. Twitter is always first. Twitter is early to the party. Twitter shows up early to the party and says, who can I argue with? And then YouTube and Rockfin, it's really a toss-up. Sometimes YouTube clicks on first, sometimes Rockfin. Today it was YouTube. But again, not a competition. Not a competition. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. We're doing a Friday show, which is rare. It's uncommon, but it's going to be a fun one anyway. And to everyone in the future, Australia, New Zealand, climate change, fix it, text me the solution. I'll tell everyone else. Shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. Our friends over at Indie Left. Indie Left is the only place to get a curated list of all the content creators and streamers you know and love. What they do is they have a little list. They curate it twice a day. They update it daily. And it just tells you, boom, here's what's going on. Makes it easier for you. To find out everything they got going on and to subscribe to their Discord, check them out at independentleft.media. That's independentleft.media. All right, my guest today, which is one of the reasons we're doing a Friday show. This guy is a rapper, and he is also one of the, I believe, co-creators of the 10 Demands for Justice. And we're both big general strike enthusiasts. So I know what you're thinking. You're like, music and a general strike. This is the most Get Your News On with Ron moment ever. Sure is. So please welcome. I had a pleasure meeting this guy on Lauren Ashcraft's show a little while back. Stoked to talk to him again. AWKWord. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how you doing? I'm excited.
Good, man.
For this. Not every interview is like, fun, and not every host is fun. I sincerely enjoy you. So I hope I think we should have a freaking show, the two of us. I don't know.
Hey, man, let's chat. Let's chat.
I don't know what Indie Left Media is, but I feel like they might be missing me on this list.
Yeah, dude, you should. I mean, I think they share Jesse Jet's stuff a lot, and I know you all collaborate because I think he might have told me about you initially. It was either him or Lauren. I mean, it was one of the two, and then yeah, we had that fun general strike chat.
Yeah,
but yeah, they should totally be sharing your stuff. Absolutely. Yeah, so let's get into this.
All right.
So let's start basic. Let's go general strike first. So you and I are both general strike enthusiasts. I always say I stand for two things right now: love and a general strike. That's pretty much. I'm sure there's other things floating around there somewhere. But, if we got to sum it up simple, I'm a big fan of love. I think it's pretty groovy. And general strike, also really sexy stuff. So so what does that mean to you? What does general strike mean to you?
Well, I think my stance on it, I am hoping I don't offend you with this. My stance on it has shifted a little bit. I think that, wait, what did you say again you are about general strike?
Love the two things I
stand for general strike.
Stan, S-T-A-N. I mean, they're not necessarily directly related.
Okay.
But I stand for, I think love, and we can talk about, we'll do love in like the second half if you want, but we can really dissect why I think love is super dope. It's because the Beatles told me. And then, but yeah, love, I'm like totally all about love and a general strike. And of course, peace too. But, I just say love and a general strike to keep it simple. But
peace is good.
Peace is pretty dope.
Yeah. But, before we went live, we were talking about being old, millennial olds,
yes.
as someone, told you. And I feel even older now because I thought you were saying stand with a D, but you're like on the Eminem stand thing. And, anyway, my God.
Well, so, and you refer to it as the Eminem thing.
Which is also old.
Which is also like I mean, it's totally been readapted by Gen Z, but you still call it out to the the
because
Eminem
I'm
thing.
going to acknowledge the creator. That's a major thing to like add a word to the dictionary. And as much as his newer raps suck, he definitely did that.
I'm not hip to his newer stuff. I like a lot of the older stuff. Again, we're just, let's make sure we date ourselves every way we possibly can throughout this entire interview. Let's, if we don't hit dial up internet, well, we're gonna have to. We're gonna have to find a way to bring it in.
Well, there's some white here somewhere. Anyway, yeah, we're at the end of the millennial generation. And what I was gonna say was that I like my attitude about a general strike really probably hasn't changed, but the way I think about it and talk about it has changed a little bit. I am for love and the threat of a general strike. I would love to not general strike. I would love to develop the non-state run ecosystem or infrastructure that would enable us to threaten the power holders of that we will general strike if we have to, and have that threat be legitimate so that they meet our demands without us ever having to general strike in the first place. Because there's a lot that is painful and difficult about a general strike for those who are actually striking. There's the potential loss of income, the potential loss of job, and with healthcare tied to employment and with money being necessary to eat and shelter yourself, there's a lot of risk involved. So now my focus is on mutual aid and building a national network of mutual aid groups so that they can share resources and ideas. And meanwhile, like parallel to that, trying to figure out a way to organize millions of people to come up with a concrete set of legitimate, agreed upon somehow demands that are universal enough that they will benefit everyone. And while I am as far left as they come and not interested in reaching across the aisle 99.9% of the time, first and foremost, I'm part of the poor and working class. And so for me, this has nothing to do with political ideology. These universal demands need to appeal to and benefit every worker and every person who doesn't have a job or is unable to have a job, who needs money, who needs to be able to feed their family, have a house, go to the doctor. And so we're not going to be able to make these demands and move forward with the general strike if they force us, if we're not clear on what our demands are, how far we're willing to go, and what we can do to protect and each other and keep each other afloat during that potentially extended period of time.
So yeah, a lot of stuff going on there, and I hear what you're saying.
Long-winded much?
No. I mean, I hear what you're saying completely, and I think those are a lot of excellent points. The thing is, it's like you bring up mutual aid. The whole purpose of that is to kind of foster a general strike to prevent a lot of those hardships to the best of our ability. That's why I always, one of the common things that I get, and then I'm sure you get it too, is people saying, oh, well, a general strike doesn't even apply to someone like you. So why? It's like, well, no, it does, because we all have a job. We all have and I don't mean like a job, like I'm going to strike for my job necessarily. I mean a job in the general strike. We all have a role. And that's where mutual aid comes in, to make sure people don't get food insecure, to make sure people don't get housing insecure, to make sure there are resources available to everyone. Because yes, it is not an easy thing to do for a society. It is very difficult. What's more difficult though? Continuing with this status quo. And I don't advocate for a general strike because I think it's going to be a fun time. I advocate for a general strike because I don't see any other solution. We can't vote our way out of this thing. We can't we got to take to the streets. And I would love it if we don't have to implement. I would love if the threat of it is enough. And God, I hope you're right. I wouldn't count on that being the case.
Right.
But I certainly hope so.
corporations and politicians have proven time and time again they don't care about us. They're not going to listen to us. Strike busting has a long history. And then, they don't pay taxes, and, they fund police and military instead of social services. I mean, the list is endless. But I think that, we've also never been as organized as this ideal is. It is so overwhelming when you think about how hard it would be, but it is equally overwhelming and difficult to do the general strike. In order to get enough people to general strike and have it actually be a general strike and one that would work, you would need to coalesce or whatever. You would need to unite all of those people anyway. So let's instead unite them with the plan of preventing a general strike, but for our own good, not on behalf of the companies and the politicians. And knowing that we can general strike and will general strike if we have to. And you mentioned like people like us having a job. Another part of making a general strike or the threat of a general strike successful is utilization of the media. So having people like us amplify the message and help get more attention by mainstream media, God forbid, is a critical role. The working group that I helped put together, our first meeting was with Sarah Nelson, who's the head of the Flight Attendants Union. And she's a major political public figure in this space. And, I learned a ton from her during this short call. One of the things she said, in addition to, having a narrow, concrete, agreed upon set of demands, establishing how far you're willing to go, in addition to that, the publicity needs to be there. It needs to have general support in order to be a general strike. And typically the media is going, as they do with everything, they're going to focus on the wrong areas. They're going to look to, and they're going to nitpick me, for instance, since I've been talking about this. They're going to do feature stories on the leaders when I don't want to be a leader in the first place. They're going to they're going to obsess and over and cover specific tactics, like the choices certain strikers make. They're going to ignore the underlying issues that are causing us to strike or threaten a strike in the first place, that, the issues that necessitate a strike, and they're going to ignore the demands. So having a really powerful PR department to this organization, this loose, unofficial organization, is critical, and people like us are like the mouthpieces for that.
And everything you just mentioned about the media, that's by design, and that is a very calculated formula that they have been running, they being the corporate media, since the 60s, since people were protesting the war in Vietnam. That's what the corporate media does to movements. They trivialize it, they marginalize it, and they try to hyperbolize it by just focusing on these, superficial things. I mean, we saw that during Occupy. They weren't really talking about the ideas or why people were out there. They were saying, look at this goofy drum circle. Look at this person who's dressed up in a costume. Noam Chomsky's speaking 10 feet over there, but we're sure as hell not going to go over there. We're sure as hell not going to listen to some of the, public intellectuals and other people who are talking about ideas. We're not going to listen to these union folks talk. We're going to go, there's somebody who's dressed up as a burrito. We're heading that way. Look at these dummies. That's what they do. And that's what they would do here too. So, the best thing, and for if there's any fellow media policy geeks in the audience listening right now, there's a book by Todd Gitlin that really lays this out and lays out the formula if y'all want to read it. But I forget the name of it, but just Google his name, you'll find it. And so your PR department would have to be aware of that and ready for it.
I think one of the ways that it would be more effective than it typically might be is it relates to the universality of the issues and the demands. A lot of the work that I do, the efforts toward abolition are, very clearly on the left side of the so-called spectrum. And I think there's the assumption that, economic inequality and, all of the things that we're preaching for related to a general strike are leftist too, but they're not. Occupy was clearly a leftist movement. And so in addition to mainstream media feeling comfortable that everyone from center to right thinks these people are lunatics, you also have the far right media attacking. I've Andy No, the Post Millennial, these types of publications have written about me before, trying to do hit pieces as, what they call an Antifa militant and, someone who's crazy and wants to abolish police because I love anarchy.
Is that an insult?
No, it's
I was going to say, I want to abolish police.
Yeah, I thanked it. I thought that was fabulous.
No, I will explain what that means when I say I want to abolish police. And I've written a piece on it too, because so many people, they're like, oh yeah, I'll send it to you. I'd be curious what you think. But so many people, they'd always be like, well, what would you do? And I'm like, okay, here's what I would do.
Yeah.
If I was benevolent dictator, here is what I would do. Here is how I would have a police situation.
Right. And it starts with police don't make us safer. Prisons don't make us safer. Okay. And the studies show that, and, we can show that, and then we can talk about what alternatives would do what, we've been taught to believe since birth, police and prisons do. So, I think that if the PR department is smart, if they're successful, and it's not just the PR department, if the groundwork, if the organizers are successful in bringing in the unions and people who don't have jobs and are not focused on political ideology, and we don't talk politics, we talk human needs, then we will not be trashed by the right-wing media. And the mainstream media will say, well, we're not so safe as we normally are. It's not just left of center. It's the entire country. It's the 99%. It's what Occupy, they kind of popularized that concept of 99%. But this would really achieve that, because
this is what it looks like.
Right. And I don't, I don't think that defunding the police and the vague concept of racial justice should be a part of this. Everything is interconnected. The same mutual aid groups that we need to enable the threat of a general strike, a legitimate threat of a general strike, or allow us to successfully general strike, are also critical to the safety of our communities and to building up the alternative mechanisms that would show why we don't need cops in cages. However, the demands themselves for a general strike need to be universal and apolitical and address poverty. I might have misunderstood you.
I actually like the idea of cops in cages.
Oh, well, we have a lot to argue about that.
No, I was kind of making a joke. I know, but I know. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I think that they should all be thrown in jail when they do what they're not supposed to do and kept there.
Yeah,
and the job shouldn't exist. I think all those things.
I mean, and the crazy thing is, I know this is a little off topic of the general strike, but when we throw people in prison, they typically don't stay there. So we're putting people in places where they are susceptible to significantly increased likelihood of disease, of rape, of other forms of violence. They're surrounded by other people who are feeling the same depravity. They are treated like animals. And then we let them out. and don't provide sufficient reentry services. And we continue to treat them as others by preventing them from voting, by putting them on parole and other forms of, at-home incarceration. So,
Yeah, our prison system does the opposite of what the concept of
Yeah.
a prison system is supposed to be. I mean, it
Correct.
is supposed to rehabilitate a person. And yes, it is supposed to be a punishment for what they did wrong, sure, but it's also supposed to rehabilitate them. Ours is not that at all. Ours is just
Right.
an extension of brutality. It is also, upholding the desires of the rich and the wealthy and the powerful. It is based in white supremacy, and it is corrupt in a capitalistic sense too, because it's all
Absolutely.
for profit. We've created a demand for prisoners. Basically, everything you could do wrong, we did. The whole concept of, well, if people commit a crime, that there's got to be something going on. How can we implement this the worst way possible? We figured it out. We figured out the worst way possible
for us, and not even as much for us as people who look darker than us,
Sure.
or who are poorer than we are. It gets progressively more detrimental. The poorer you are, the more melanin you have. There are criminalized communities that are over policed. They're targeted. They're and they're incarcerated at a profit. It's written into our Constitution that slavery is illegal unless you're a prisoner. So, that's something that, we clearly need to do away with, is that little clause in the 13th Amendment that slavery is okay if you've committed a crime. The reality is that it actually works perfectly at the same time that we've done everything wrong.
For the rulers.
So, right. Reforms don't work because they're trying to alter or make a gentler version of something that is intentional. Here's my cat, one of many. Yes, this is a good one. And they all assume that crime, punishment, criminal, victim, and so they strengthen the institution itself every time they don't question the validity of this dialectic in the first place. Since it works so well, since it works so well for the corporations and the rich and the people, the white rich people who are protecting their property from, the descendants of the slaves, the only solution is to get rid of it completely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's when people say reform, I just say, look, maybe, and I can't even say for sure, maybe before you and I were both alive, that was a possibility. Maybe I can't even say. I mean, I doubt it based on when you trace back the systemic disease that is our law enforcement. I highly doubt it, but maybe at some point in time that would have been a possibility, but it is certainly not now.
Yeah,
it is certainly long. That ship has sailed a long freaking time ago, if it was ever even there in the first place. Yep. So, what are the 10 demands for justice?
Good segue. This is my, up until recently, has, for a year, has been my nearly sole focus. A group of activists got together in about, I don't know, maybe April 2020 to put together a set of demands that would essentially pave the road or provide a roadmap toward abolition. Our main goals have been education and awareness, and providing this framework to communities, to organizers in cities and towns who are doing this work, trying to defund the police and racist, classist policing, prosecution and sentencing in their areas. There are so many misconceptions about what abolition is, that it's lawlessness, that it's meant to happen overnight. Our goal is to dispel the myths, first and foremost, by you know, and also clearly provides solutions. You know, each of the 10 demands is pretty comprehensive in what we should do, what we can do now, and what would need to happen over time. So there's a couple demands like police accountability and police transparency. When we don't have police, we won't need that. But as long as we do have police, they cannot continue to act with impunity and in secret. You know, when we talk about defunding the police, we do talk about defunding them right now, and we talk about defunding them to zero. But you can't just defund and do nothing else. Defunding comes with reallocation. There are trillions of dollars, for instance, you know, in the Pentagon budget and elsewhere, that could easily go to making, you know, to ending the 40 million people who go to bed hungry every night. There are enough vacant homes for houseless people to live in a more traditional manner if they were given that opportunity. There's certainly enough money for us to all have free healthcare, but that's not going to happen. So we are talking about taking the money that is coming out of police budgets that are used primarily to address quality of life issues like gang policing, broken windows policing, you know, drug arrests, things like that, and take that money and put it into mediation, safety checks, peacekeepers, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, education, mutual aid, things that would actually make us safer in ways that cops were never even intended to. And when I say us, I mean all of us, even those who've historically been disfranchised. And this should be led by those who have been historically disfranchised. Those who are most impacted should be the ones taking the lead because they know better than anyone else. And they should be the ones who benefit the most from the changes. And, you know, again, defunding to zero takes time. If we were to just remove every single police officer and open every prison and jail overnight, we would not be in a good place because our society is not built yet for that. But there are movements all over the country at the local level and at the state level that are building these alternative mechanisms that over time, as we defund the police and allocate those services to, you know, those resources to where they belong, then we will really be in a place where we can all feel confident that cops in cages are not necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's and yeah, I see how you guys kind of lay it out. Like you go like one step at a time. It's like first we got to do this, then we got to do this, then we got to do this, and then we can, because they love to say one of the things that they're saying now, and I'd be curious your take on this. One of the things that they're saying now is they love to say like we're going to reimagine, and they're saying that to appease the people because that's actually not wrong. It's just fluff coming from them.
Yeah.
Because they're not actually calling for a reimagining of it. They're just kind of using flowery things because they know that people aren't buying the reform bullshit anymore. They know people aren't buying that anymore. So they're saying, well, we're just going to reimagine it. And it's like, yeah. But reimagining means the idea of a police officer as we know it shouldn't exist anymore. Correct. Reimagine does not mean, oh, you'll shoot him in the leg. That's not what it means. That's not what it means. It means that a police officer as we know it should not exist anymore. There's no reason for it. It does not keep us safer. There are so many other ways we could have law and order in our lives.
Yep. And, you know, we do need to reimagine, but what we need to reimagine is not policing, but public safety.
Right.
And what actually public safety means. Police kill 3 people a day and are responsible for 1/3 of all stranger murders in this country. More than 40% admit to abusing their spouses or significant others or domestic partners. And they only solve 2% of all major crimes.
Is it that low? Is it 2%?
2%. Imagine doing your job well 2% of the time. You wouldn't have a job in any other industry, in any other field, in any other occupation. You would be fired. But they don't just not get fired. They get protected by
They get more money.
Right. They get more money. They get, after a year of sustained protest, following years before that of organizing and protests before that, police budgets actually increased across the country in 2021. So while there were 20 plus cities that defunded and hundreds of millions of dollars that went to better solutions, across the board, we actually increased police spending. And with the power of police unions and the money in police foundations, and laws like qualified immunity, and 35 states actually allowing police to have sex with people in their custody, they are protected from everything. When they do get caught red-handed and the cops just cannot figure out a way to protect their own, they fire them, and they're called wandering cops because it takes about 2 days for them to move one city over and get another job. They just killed someone, they got caught, new job, they repeat the behavior. So they've proven by their own behavior that they cannot be reformed. People thought that body cams were a solution. If they were being watched, they wouldn't commit these heinous acts. Unfortunately, we should have known better when we saw the veracity with which police unions were begging for body cameras. Why would they want body cameras if they were not wanting to get caught planting evidence, raping people and killing people and beating people? Well, it's because all body cameras did was increase the surveillance state. It gave them even more eyes. They control the body cameras. The body cameras are facing outward. And now, in addition to the cameras that are watching us all the time, Big Brother all over the cities and on the police car dashboards, they're also on the body. So they're like 360 degrees of surveillance. And as we see, it didn't stop them.
Yeah, isn't it weird that sometimes they go off at very convenient times too?
Right.
I don't know if you ever noticed.
I sure have.
Unbelievable. Yeah. No, there was a shooting in my old neighborhood in Pasadena, California, and I'm sure you probably saw the video when it came out. But it's like they shot this guy, and they released this, dystopian propaganda video where they're like, "That's a gun," and it's like what? And it was so deceptively edited that it's like this. It was unreal. Like watching it, you were like, this is the United States. This is real. Like they're trying to sell this.
The media, they regurgitate it all. They essentially print and spout on TV and radio the press release that comes from the cops.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of work to undo everything we've been taught for so long. And, slowly but surely, we are getting there. Statistics don't lie. And the percentage of people in prison for the rapes and murders that everyone asks us about, is very small. The idea of of stranger danger, it's only 10%, 90% of the people who are victims of sexual violence have it done to them by people they know, their friends and family. And mental health treatment is virtually non-existent. Substance abuse treatment is virtually non-existent. If you're rich, you can go to Betty Ford. If you're poor, you go to prison. Poverty is criminalized in this country, and race is criminalized. So the less we have cops patrolling criminalized communities and collecting free labor, the stronger the communities these people are being removed from are going to be. The profit motive is also really clear when you look at the fact that it is the people who are incarcerated are counted in the census of the cities, or typically not cities, the country, the farmland and upstate communities in which they're incarcerated. So people are removed from typically urban areas. They're removed from their communities, no matter where they are, and are then lost in the census, which means those communities get less funding than they already do, and are counted as, you know, more people of color in entirely white communities who get more funding. It provides jobs to people who wouldn't have otherwise have employment. So, you know, with all of the different services that can be provided, there would be a lot of other jobs. And for people who aren't skilled and can't do the work that requires like de-escalation and things like that, they would just have to find other jobs. And we don't really have a job shortage in this country. We have a shortage of living wage paying jobs.
Right.
And so that's kind of where the general strike threat comes in. You know, we need to pay people a living wage. So the options for poor white people is not policing and corrections.
So I wanted to go here real quick because you tweeted this yesterday and I kind of got a kick out of it. Today was, I think this was from yesterday. So yesterday was the 50th anniversary of the war on drugs. And you guys over 10 demands, you're all committed to the end of the war on drugs. And ACLU also says the war on drugs is bullshit. So when did it officially begin then? Like, how was it? Like, it was Nixon's phrase, wasn't it?
Yes. Yep. 1971, it was Nixon. And, you know, in that thread, you can see so many really important parts of this. You know, one, the hundreds of thousands of people who have died or been disappeared as a result of the wars, the actual wars related to the drug trade. You can see that, you know, Black people, for instance, are 600% more likely to be incarcerated for drugs, even though they are just as likely, not more likely, to use drugs and less likely to sell drugs than white people. Black people and brown people are the ones who get the mandatory minimum sentences that should be done away with. You can also see the insane expense to American taxpayers I guess, maintain these drug laws. It costs $6,500 a minute to run the DEA. And, you know, the war on drugs is never going to be won, and it's never going to end until we acknowledge that substance misuse or abuse or addiction is a health issue. It's a public health issue, and that substances are used widely, totally recreationally, and totally without harm by people who do not have a problem with it. So when people do, they shouldn't be deemed criminals. They should be deemed in need of help.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And just the...
And I say that, by the way, as someone who was fortunate enough to have a wife who has health care and got sent to rehab.
That's, yeah. When was that? Do you want to talk about it a little bit, or?
It was almost 900 days ago that I got out. I've been clean for about almost 900 days. So like 2+ years, you know, and I didn't get to go to Betty Ford,
Sure.
you know, and I was, you know, I detoxed in a room. It was me and a heroin addict, and you're shaking and sweating, and it's brutal. Like they take your vitals constantly because like you can die when you're detoxing. And then, you know, you spend a long time like focused on addressing, you know, the harm you've caused as a result of your addiction, and you know, how to avoid going back to relying on drugs or whatever. But there, you know, it's imperfect. You know, many people relapse and go back. And there are issues with, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, for one, it's very faith-based. There's a lot of God stuff, and it's clearly a Christian God. And, you know, when I was there, one of the, I don't know, upper management type people kind of recognized something in me. And, you know, I don't know if, you know, it was that the 12 steps weren't my thing or what it was. You know, I was also by my nature, like very quickly trying to help other people and less focused on myself, which I was told I'm not supposed to be doing, but like I couldn't help. And anyway, any case, she introduced me to One Breath at a Time, which is a 12-step program that is essentially Buddhist. And then I discovered Refuge Recovery, which is like a punk rock, hip hop, Buddhist recovery program. So there are ways to avoid the traditional methods.
Does the punk rock one, is it just like a Minor Threat album on a loop?
It's pretty awesome
until you stop.
It's pretty awesome.
No, it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I'm very fortunate that you know, I haven't relapsed, or obviously I wouldn't be at the not nearly 900 days. But you know, when you don't look like me, and you live in a community that is over policed and you do relapse, the likelihood of it becoming a criminal matter are incredibly accentuated. You know, if I had a relapse, most likely I would go to the hospital or I'd go to rehab. But that's because of where I live and what I look like. You know, people who most crimes committed in this country, you know, those that aren't just entirely nonviolent possession charges, which you'll see in that same thread from yesterday, is a great significant percentage of the 2.3 million people incarcerated and the million.
And then they get locked up for an absurd amount of time.
Yep.
For something that shouldn't even be a crime.
Right.
And this is by design because, again, they love that prison labor that they get.
Exactly. And those crimes that are considered violent or are not considered drug related are often tied to addiction, are often tied to hunger, tied to poverty. Very few people in this country are just this evil that movies are made about, or that that like the nightly news focuses on. There's not a lot of serial killers out there. And those that are probably just need mental health treatment and were probably victims of abuse that put them in this position in the first place. But most of the people are committing crimes out of desperation. So if you don't have enough money, if you get out of prison or you get out of rehab or you get out of jail, and you are fiending, and you don't have any money, you might rob somebody in order to get money to feed your addiction. That is not something you want to do. It's not something you choose to do for the thrill. It is desperation. And the solution is addressing the underlying problem, which is not the crime that was committed. Even, you know, it was the need for the drugs to address this depression, anxiety, you know, whatever it might be that got them into drugs in the first place.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we don't address the systemic issues. I mean, the fact that, there was that thing that it was in the news, I think, about a year ago, where there was just that guy who robbed a pharmacy and left a note, and it just said, "I am really sorry, but I have a sick kid." And that wasn't, you know, people just shrug at this stuff instead of realizing, like, we have a systemic disaster that has reached its breaking point. We're beyond the breaking point.
Yes.
And
the threat of the general strike is all about. People should not be in that position.
Right.
And we need to demand that we are no longer in that position. That person is not a criminal. They're a good father.
Totally. And we are at a point now, and this is why, like, no one's saying a general strike is simple. No one's saying a general strike is going to be a picnic. We all have a role. And what I'm saying, and I think what you're saying too, if we don't have status quo shifting change now, we're not going to. And we are going to enter into an era of straight up neo-feudalism. And this is going to be, I mean, it's going to be a bigger disaster than it is now. I mean, it's going to be like almost like, I don't know how people are going to be able to live here.
Yeah. And, you know, this is a change of topic, but it's an interesting one and it's related. This is what led so many friends, you know, people on the left to, you know, to almost celebrate what happened on January 6th. Because while the intent was wrong, why they were doing it was because they believed a lie that the election was stolen and they believed in their Fuhrer, Donald Trump. But people celebrated working class, or at least the idea of a collective of regular people challenging the status quo, challenging our elected officials who are not doing what we elected them to do. And it's led to, you know, Proud Boys and Boogie Boys and whatever being invited to leftist talk shows, and real powerful, angry, vitriolic disagreement about whether we should be organizing with them, platforming them, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, I'll just say that for what it's worth, that I went from being a kid whose response to racism to Nazis was to find and beat up as many as I could find. I was following in the footsteps of my cousins who co-founded Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice. That's what they spent their high school years doing. But I was raised by a pacifist, an activist mother who urged me and eventually succeeded in getting me to refocus my energies away from one-on-one violence against people that I deemed to be the enemy to working towards substantive change. And as I've become an abolitionist over the years, I've realized that the 99% of us can be reformed, rehabilitated, transformed, repaired. And that's the type of justice that, you know, abolitionists are looking for, to replace our current so-called justice system. But it is also how we should think about everyday people and our interactions with everyday people. As I said in the beginning, in order to have a general strike, we need it to be apolitical. We need it to cross the aisle, so to speak. We need to be able to ensure that people who love Donald Trump still understand that they are in the same boat as we are, and that a general strike or a threat of a general strike would get us all the things that we need that we're not given, like a living wage, like healthcare, God forbid, worker ownership in the businesses that earn billions and billions and billions of dollars and don't pay taxes. And so before I would put a Boogaloo Boy or a Proud Boy or a neo-Nazi on my show and platform them, before I would organize with them in a safe space with LGBTQ people, with people of color, with disabled people, with Muslims, with Jews, I would want to ensure that these people were no longer active Boogaloo Boys or Proud Boys or neo-Nazis. I don't think they should all be beat up. I don't think they should all be killed. I no longer believe that every good Nazi is a dead Nazi. I believe that the only good Nazi is a dead Nazi. I believe that all Nazis probably were fed generations worth of disinformation and propaganda to blame the wrong people for their misfortune and have an opportunity to learn and change and become allies. That is a hard process. A lot of former Nazis are the ones doing the work.
And that does require very hard conversations. So going on what you're saying, my personal general rule of thumb is, look, if somebody is a straight up white supremacist neo-Nazi and they are far past that line, that's, that's too far gone. That is too far gone. However, getting people who are treading in that direction, pulling people away from that, I think is very important and very essential. And also, and I'll, this is something that I think Nick over at the Fred Hampton Leftist was saying, like, look, white people, you guys need to have these awkward conversations and pull people away from these lines. I mean, I'm paraphrasing what he actually tweeted, but that was the theme of it. So, while I recognize that, yes, there are certainly, lines that are crossed where people are too far gone, I do see the value in trying to prevent people from crossing those lines.
Yeah. And, I'm hesitant to even say that anyone is too far gone. Because I think about that's what they would say to someone who's committed certain crimes due to mental illness. Because I want to keep it all in that framework. And so, I also believe that this, political spectrum is honestly more like a circle, and extremists in a lot of ways are really similar to each other. So the far left, someone who is on the far left, could have ended up on the far right really easily had they just been given slightly different information. I happen to feel 1,000% strongly that the information on the left is right and the information on the right is wrong. But someone who is willing to go that far because of how they feel might be just as equally willing to go that far in the other direction and be a really powerful ally. The incredibly difficult part that I've never undertaken is transferring them, like moving them.
But you see the value in doing that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I think that honestly, that is the work of former Nazis, the ones who were there and somehow someone helped them. They know better than I do what put those people in the current people in the positions they're in and how to talk them out of it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, American History X is a fictional movie, but
it's a good one.
Oh, it's a brilliant film. But when you it really does break it down in a way that is so, I mean, and while that movie is fiction, like in the just the story itself, there's gotta be so many cases like that have actually happened in real life.
Absolutely.
And the big theme in that movie is these concepts, these hate concepts, they were learned and they can be unlearned.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I do think there's truth in that, but that can't happen without, people leaving their comfort zones and these uncomfortable conversations happening. And
Yep.
it's, in every single case, you make a judgment call.
Yeah, that's true. And the same can be said for cops in cages. We were taught to believe this from birth. This is the answer. It's the only answer. It requires unlearning. It requires a lot of work. It requires difficult conversations. I'm certainly more comfortable having the conversations about why, over policing and mass incarceration don't work than I am sitting down with someone who wants to kill me because I'm Jewish. But they're all, I have a lot of appreciation for anyone who is doing that work. That's for sure. Because at the end of the day, the rich Nazis are the ones I don't think we can really change, because they have access to the education. They know that they benefit from white supremacy. They, and just choose to be hateful. Like, I have a lot more faith in people who became hateful out of desperation, like those who commit crimes out of desperation. I can relate to that. I can understand that. And what we all have in common is that we are all being shit on by the rich people, the politicians we elect that don't care about us, and the corporations.
Yeah. Well, and those politicians are benefiting from that same system. Those corporations are benefiting from that
Absolutely.
same system. I
It
mean, and
is
this
all
is
connected. Yeah, the same companies that donate to the campaigns of politicians, donate to police foundations, and profit directly from not only prison labor, but the food that is served in prison, the furniture that is made for prisons, the phone calls that are exorbitantly expensive from prison. It is all absolutely intricately entangled.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And well, so then how do you, I mean, just based on where this conversation has gone, like how do you propose we start breaking down these walls then? I mean, how do you propose we do that?
I mean, a lot of people, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the walls, but because there's so many different walls. There's
Sure.
walls between people, there's walls between all people and them, the bad guys. But I like a lot of people, not a lot, but a good amount of people who've asked me, is it even possible to abolish police and prisons and still have capitalism? I am 100% in favor of a general strike or the threat of a general strike because it moves us closer to socialism for the people. And, like there's already tons of versions of socialism all over our country. They just don't necessarily benefit most of us. There's corporate welfare, corporate bailouts constantly. We just don't get bailed out. And so, when it comes to the prison industrial complex, I really don't believe that there has to be, I really don't believe that the only way capitalism can exist is through mass incarceration. They make so much money not off of the backs of incarcerated, predominantly Black and brown people, that they don't need that money. So I don't really believe that we have to abolish capitalism to abolish police and prisons. I would love to abolish capitalism. That's a focus for somebody else. Like we can all only do what we can do. I've always been focused on, racial and social and so-called criminal justice, and through mutual aid and the necessity of community-based organizations and services. There's a really strong connection between that and what we need to enable a successful general strike. I believe that it's not just race that's criminalized in this country, it's class. So, to me, these two things really go hand in hand. And when we have abolished poverty by providing a living wage, by providing paid sick leave, by providing free health care, by extending unemployment, by abolishing, debt, these kinds of things, there would be a lot less petty crime to begin with. And the rest would be addressed by the alternatives to policing and mass incarceration. So as far as like what we can do, if like there are things that anyone can do at any level. If you don't want to leave your house, if you don't want to spend any money, send a text message from the 10 Demands site to your mayor, your governor, your state or federal Congress, explaining to them why what we have now is not working for the majority of us and what the alternatives could be that would actually make us safer. If you have money, donate to mutual aid groups in your area. Donate to Black and brown led organizations that are not wrapped up in the nonprofit industrial complex. If you are able to, like typically it's students have more of a capacity, people who aren't married with kids, who aren't working. If you're able to get out on the streets and protest, if you're able to strike fear in the power holders that if they don't listen to the moderates in their city council meetings, then their entire cities are going to burn, do that. It's important. if you have time and are well spoken, go to a city council meeting, make phone calls, get out on the street and talk to people and share information. Volunteer with a mutual aid group, and provide resources. It's not just cash that is dispensed. It is vital services. It is clothing. It is medicine. There's so many things that we can all do to, for someone who's obsessive compulsive like me, it's hard to not have like this vast, detailed structure where I know it's all going to work and we can just do this and replace what we have now. We have to rely on a ton of really small versions of this ideal all over the country. In one community leads to another community, leads to another community, where we don't need to rely on corporations. We don't need to rely on calling 911 because we keep ourselves safe. We protect us. And then with things like Mutual Aid Hub, or like what I'm trying to work on potentially with them, to build a national network of mutual aid groups so they can share resources. This is a way where we can extend the reach. But all of this is going to take time. And the only way that it can happen is by people doing what they can do. Not canceling each other for not doing enough, not canceling each other because you may disagree on one topic or another, trying to bring in as many people as possible who are not going to, who are not going to infiltrate and destroy the movement. There has to be InfoSec and, OPSEC. You have to be secure and you have to be safe, but within reason, bring in as many people as you can.
All right. Where can people go to learn more?
If you want to learn more about abolition and the 10 demands for justice, go to tenforjustice.com, 10forjustice.com. My website is thisisawkward.com, and it's spelled AWKWord. If you want to get involved in our mutual aid work or in strategizing around a general strike, probably the best way would be to DM me on Twitter. It's AWKWordRAP.
All right. Thanks for coming on, man. It was good catching up with you on all this.
Yeah,
obviously covered a lot of ground, and we'll have to cover a lot more. I'll give a pet shout out. I do this thing where I shout out. Oh, wait, I should probably shout out one of your kittens. What are all the kittens you have?
I thought that's what you were going to do.
Yeah, I guess I got to do that. Whenever my guest has a pet, they get it.
Yeah, thank you.
But I have a Twitter thread where it's like I call out people's pets. But yeah, I forgot you're a cat. You're a cat guy.
Well, my wife is a cat lady, although much younger and prettier than you envision of a cat lady. But we have about 30 cats in this house and 2 dogs, because my wife has an obsession for she's allergic to cats, and there's a breed called Minskins that are hypoallergenic, and they all look completely different. Some have crazy hair like the one that appeared on my shoulder. Some have short hair, some have no hair. They're all really tiny and really sweet. So she's breeding them. And as the stay-at-home dad / media activist guy, 99% of the daytime work falls on me. So just try to envision me cleaning litter boxes. And
that's 30's a lot.
30
I got one, and I mean,
I will say, for anyone totally freaking out, that half of them are kittens that will not be staying here.
Sure.
But the other 15 are long-term torture devices. I love them. They're very cuddly and cute, but it is a ton of work that distracts me from meaningful activism. But it's important to keep these
animals, that is still meaningful activism, though. I mean, this is like, I think so. I think that, look, animals are part of the world too, and they are there for us. We should be there for them. And
my mom was her main thing was like saving open space, and she saved, I don't even know, tons of acres. And I was a vegan until I got so skinny that I couldn't do it anymore. I'd be a vegan today if I didn't feel like I would get really skinny and lose my hair again. But so I'm with you 100%. Animals are incredible, you know, like,
yeah. Well, and cats are still so often misunderstood. I mean, especially black cat. I mean, you know, my cat Lucy, she's a black cat. I love her so
Racist.
much, and I really I have a soft spot for black cats because of they still face, like, I mean, it's amazing because it can be traced back to like bizarre religious superstition.
Yeah.
But it still exists, and it's so disturbing. I joined all these cat groups on Facebook when the pandemic started, hoping to like kind of just feel a little bit better and have a way to unplug and just see cute cats sometimes during the day. But it had the opposite effect, where I would just see all these things where they'd post a thing where it's like, hey, we just brought in this orange tabby and this black cat. The orange tabby got 40 phone calls. The black cat got 2. And it breaks your freaking heart. I love both those cats, and I want to see them both get homes. Don't get me wrong. I love the orange tabby too. But it just shatters your heart that even cat people
what the hell?
Have their, like, it just
you need to adopt all the black ones then.
Yes, I mean, we need to adopt all of them, but it's like, yeah, I mean, I will probably go out of my way for the rest of my life for black cats in particular, because, you know, I mean, Lucy is the sweetest cat, and I do think like a lot of people say that about black cats, and I think there's something to that. I think they have an awareness of it to an extent, and they know that. I mean, really, like,
well, they all definitely do have weird similarities personality wise, like, based on how they look. There's like this guy, this one right here, I forget what they're called, this like coloring, but they are incredibly crazy. All of the ones that look like this are really wild. It's something genetic. And so, yeah, maybe black cats have a thing too.
Yeah.
Well,
so, well, I can't shout out 30 cats. So give me like, is there a name for the, is there a name for like, is it like the Awkward Ranch? Like, what is it?
My wife, well, it's called Catskills Cattery.
Catskills Cattery. We'll just go with that. Catskills Cattery says meow, 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 meow. And Lucy says meow. And Lucy says hello to the Catskills Cattery. And Awkward says peace, and I say peace, and I say mutual aid and love and general strike, and all right, we'll see you next time. We'll be back Monday. But come next week, we're back to our normal schedule, Monday through Wednesday. This week was kind of weird. Had a Friday show with Awkward.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
No, I'm glad we worked this out, and we'll be back on Monday. It's back to normal then, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We'll see you then. Peace.
Peace.